There we are. Welcome to the Movie Madhouse. I'm Rob,
I'm James.
and we are live on the air. Um, James got a hold of us for a good topic this time, didn't you?
I did.
What's your topic?
Uh, my topic is it seemed it seemed ideal for this because uh, it was movies. On the surface, it'd be movies I love to talk about the most,
Mm-hmm.
but not all of them I'd actually talk to someone about. So it'd be movies I love to talk about the most / movies I want to talk about the most. So it's movies I love to talk to people about the most.
Okay, I like that because everybody has it. You know, when someone comes up and they said, "Oh, have you seen this movie?"
Oh
You
yeah.
know, it's a go-to. So,
Well, and one of the movies on my list, talking it out for the better part of a year, actually brought me around to love this movie from initially being disappointed with it.
really,
Yeah, I'm sure I've mentioned it before. I won't right now. I'll wait till it's on the list.
so it is on the list.
Oh yeah, it's on the list. It
All right.
has to be. It has to be.
In that case, let's jump into this. What is your number 10
My
movie?
my number 10 is Joker.
Okay, why that one?
Um, this one is just because how often I've well the podcast the show you just did with Stefan and who was the other guy?
Mitchell.
Okay, I think it was the one you just did with those two, or it might have no, it certainly wasn't the great movies that bombed, because Joker did anything but bomb.
Yeah, exactly.
It was when you said you was it. I don't know if you went to see it with Mike or whoever you went to see it with. You said you came out and you both appeared to have watched two different movies.
Oh, it was Joker, Chris.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I get so many people. Okay. Spoiler for those watching: we're going to spoil the living crap out of these movies.
Yes.
You hear the
don't
title of
know
the
that-
movie?
If
Yeah,
you don't know that already, then you've not been ever listening to our show.
yeah. But more so than usual.
Go for it. Spoil away.
Okay. Well, it's when people are saying like, well, how much? Okay, I agree with the unreliable narrator and how much of the movie do you know actually happened at the end. I think the vast majority of the. Hang on a second.
So you're trying to bring something up?
No. Well, sometimes I like to have the movie there in case. I always forget actors' names. Okay. Oh my goodness. All right.
Readjust.
Yeah. Um, like when you get to the end of the movie, and there's stuff all throughout the movie like, oh, oh, that's what you were doing.
Yep.
Nice. Excellent.
Now they have no excuse.
Yes. Okay, because you got me right before I actually said something. All right. When people say like it's hints that the movie's all in his head, where you get like all the clocks are stuck at what 10 after 11, including the one you see in when he flashes back to the asylum that he was in.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's one thing I found weird, where he mentions when he was in the hospital, but it seems when he goes to steal his mom's file,
Mm-hmm.
it just seems like he's never been there before. I don't know how to explain that part really.
Okay.
But I mean, okay, right to the end, where people are saying, "Oh, the whole movie's in his head, and he's been in the asylum the whole time." Okay, sure, if you want to look at it that way, but you look at what happens in the movie. He gets to know he meets and talks to Zazie Beetz, the other tenant in the apartment building, becomes friends with her, goes on a date with her, sleeps with her, gets to know her. She consoles him when his mom is dying. And then right towards the end of the movie, you find out that when he breaks into her apartment, she barely knows him. She knows his name. What is he doing in her apartment? And he imagined all those encounters with her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, if the movie is an idealized version of his life, he's imagining the life he wants. And I understand, I understand, like, he sees Robert De Niro on TV and then all of a sudden imagines himself in the audience. Okay, we know that's not real. But the parts with Zazie Beetz we're meant to think those are real. By the end of the movie, you find out that those encounters weren't real, and yeah, of course, being on the show initially wasn't real. He did end up on the show, but if you're going to imagine an idealized version of your life, why would you imagine a version that also has parts that didn't actually happen inside parts that didn't actually happen?
The way I view that is the very final scene, in the modern therapist's office.
In the hospital, yeah.
Yep. That's the only real footage. Okay. We'll call it real. Everything else before that we've been watching is actually him talking to this therapist. So that when these things happen, like he meets Zazie and has this affair with her and everything, but then suddenly in the movie you find out he didn't. That's his therapist going, yeah, but did this really happen? And he actually kind of confronts it himself in real time during this therapy session.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. And it might partially be because I don't see a reason why the majority of the movie couldn't have happened.
That's just it. I think a lot of it did happen, and the stuff that you say didn't happen probably did, but not as grand. Or, like the final scene with him on the cop car, hands out and all that, and all these people around applauding him. I don't think that was real. I think that was in his head. He was probably staying in the back of the car and people were just walking around. That kind of thing.
So you think it could have been a flashback that he was a retelling and a bit embellished?
Exactly.
I can go along with that. But this is why it's on my list.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why too, because my view is not 100% concrete, because this is just what I think.
Oh yeah, and I like it's a two-edged sword, because I sometimes think it's a cop-out when an actor or director says, "Well, we want it to be ambiguous. We want to leave it up to the audience," when they can't give us a real excuse why they didn't give us a real ending. But this is the other side of that, where they gave us everything and saying, okay, there are clear interpretations. Well, there aren't clear interpretations, but you have your choice of this or this or this, and we're cool with all of them.
Exactly.
As opposed to, we stop at a point and you get to imagine what happens. If that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I guess in a nutshell, for me, that's what I'm saying. I love that kind of film because it's completely open.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great thing to have on this list. It kind of beats out my number 10 though.
It was originally up at number 4, but I'm like, well, it wasn't one of the ones that I didn't realize it wasn't one of the ones that I wanted to talk about even more, because after we just did. So I apologize. It got moved.
That's okay. It was on here, and that's what matters.
Okay. So what is your number 10?
My number 10 is Saw.
The original?
Yes,
Oh, interesting.
because so many people, they go, "Oh, the Saw franchise. Oh my God, that's just gory." Blah 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 blah. The first one, isn't.
You just I had a blank spot at number 9 and you just gave me an idea for it. So thank you.
Hey, that's my pleasure. That's what I'm here for.
That's, if nothing else. All right, sorry. Saw.
Yes, Saw. And the one thing I'm going to mention, because we are live, if you have movies that you love to talk about, they may not be the best, they may not be the worst, but anytime people talk about movies, you talk about them, comment, because we'll throw them up on here too, because we want to talk about them. But I love Saw because of the fact that it's not as gory as the rest of the franchise. It's not as violent as the rest of the franchise. There's a
It
lot
is a lot more. It is a lot more psychological.
right, and there's a lot of implied stuff, but it doesn't do that porn horror that the later movies do. you know and it's just a very, very solid story with a wicked twist.
It is. It is. I love all the Saw movies, so I put this one at the bottom, but I'm putting it at the bottom of all the, since I love all of them, just because I like I liked how they kept stepping it up almost every single installment.
Yeah. Now,
And if
you get around 4 and 5, I thought the franchise should have died then. Like this, I still enjoyed the movies, but a little bit less after 4 and 5, just because they're trying to shove stories into a story that's done.
they keep going back and revealing apprentices and apprentices
Yeah.
and apprentices.
Like Darth Maul, the secret apprentice of, and it's like, no, stop it. It's just. Now I'm going to throw this up real quick. This is a buddy of mine, Steve, amazing audio guy. But he says, what about indie movies that we make? Let's talk local. Dude, you're in for a treat when my number 9 comes around.
It can be any movie.
Exactly. So yeah, Steve, too, if you have stuff that when you talk about people, you bring it up, throw it up here. We'll bring it up. Okay, James, what's your number 9?
My number 9, thanks to you, is Saw 4.
Oh, really?
Because when I saw this one in the theater, I was not as blown away at the end that I would be when I saw the original Saw. But when you get to the end of Saw 4 and you realize that it's happening at the same time as Saw 3.
Okay, there we go.
Parallel stories, because you're watching the movie and you think back, it's like they keep saying, where is Jigsaw, where is Joe Kramer? They're not referring to him in the past tense.
Yep.
And then you get into the room and the other guy comes through and it's like, oh, it's at the same time as Saw 3. And let me see, I think my favorite of the series is still probably Saw 5, and that might be because probably it was like the group of 5. I think it was 5. The actors they got for that movie and the elaborate traps they had and the way it ended up, I just thought was amazing. And especially how the cop, Agent Strom, how he flips it on the FBI guy investigating him and traps him. And it's just like, oh my God, you could have avoided all this had you just listened.
Yeah. See, that number 5, that's to me where it should have died. Like there was some good stuff in there. I love the opening. Like you said, those 5 people, but that's the beginning of the story that was just shoved in.
I won't disagree, because I did think that 6 kind of went back down to almost the bottom, because it was good, but not after you go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yes.
And 7, I thought they brought it back up just because of the elaborate traps and bringing Dr. Gordon back. And you think it's the final episode, and the way they kind of bookend it, the same way you ended the first movie.
Yep.
You get Dr. Gordon throwing the saw in and closing the door after Jigsaw did it. Anyway.
like I said, there's some cool visuals. They're
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Let me see. My number 9 is actually a tie. And I
Ooh.
bring both of these movies up because of their impact on suicide awareness.
Okay.
If that topic ever comes up, these movies always come up. The first one is from a great couple in New York. I think they live in New York, or they live in Montreal. I'm not sure. But anybody that's seen my wall has seen the poster for Dead Dicks. And it's by Chris and Lee. And it's about a guy who is in his little apartment. His sister goes to investigate and finds him dead, hanging in the cupboard. But as she sits back and starts to cry, he walks behind her as well, nude. And so she's like, what the heck's going on? He goes, yeah, this weird thing. I just keep coming back. And they go around the apartment and there's all these bodies of him.
Oh, you have talked about this before.
Yes.
Okay.
And the statements in there on suicide are just incredible, yet it's done with a comedic edge because of the way they keep playing this, where he just keeps coming back out of this hole in the wall. He just keeps being reborn. It's really cool. And then the second one is Last Call, and that's for a completely different reason. It is so powerful, by Gavin Michael Booth, that one from the festival.
Right.
Where a guy misdials and gets a janitor, and he thinks he's calling the suicide helpline. And so she realizes what's going on and tries to talk him down. And that's what it is. It's real-time, single shot movie done on 2 screens.
Interesting.
Just so powerful. So that's what I mean. When I got to there, it was like, ooh, if I had to pick one, I don't know if I could, because they're done in completely different ways, but they both tell a powerful story about suicide.
Well, then that's the perfect choice to have a tie.
Yeah. No, I can't. I could never pick between those two.
I guess the spoiler alert's also for you and I, because I never got around to watching Last Call.
Seriously?
Yeah. And I'm sure there's some movies
I
sorry.
know.
But and I'm sure I've got some movies on here you've never seen, and
Oh, yeah.
I'll say up front, well, no, I'm still of the mind that if one twist spoils the movie for you, they made a good twist and a bad movie.
Right. Because no matter the twist, I still want to see the movie.
Yeah. I mean, because there's still, like, without the twist of Sixth Sense, I don't think it's as good a movie. I think they made a really great twist, but I don't think it had a lot of rewatchability personally.
I differ just a little bit, because once I found out the twist, I went back a couple times just to watch to see if I missed cues,
Yeah.
But I agree with you in the fact that to have that big bang of the movie, you can only do it once. Just like Blair Witch. There's only once.
On the other side of that, you got The Usual Suspects, where, say what you want about Kevin Spacey, I think it's an amazing movie. It always will be. And that movie, even without the reveal at the end, is 5-star acting from everyone.
Yes.
So it's just, I don't care about the twist. It's a great twist, but the movie's awesome anyway.
And that's the best way to be.
Yeah.
All right, buddy.
Are we back on me?
Number 8.
Number eight, and I did not plan this, is a horror movie called Crazy Eights.
Wow, that fits.
Coincidence. Now, this is one of those After Dark films that when they put out the seasons of those movies at After Dark Film Festival, and I think there was like, you could get them in a box set of like 5 or 6 DVDs. And they did it for several years. And then they branched off into their After Dark originals, which I wouldn't really recommend. I recommend all but one of the regular After Dark films, where it was just like a horror movie that they made and produced, and then After Dark. They have it at TIFF, the Toronto After Dark Film Festival, or it's one of the segments of TIFF.
Okay.
And then they acquired the movies. So this one's called Crazy Eights. Excuse me. And it's takes place. I can't remember the location in the country, but come on, Crazy Eights. IMDb being stupid.
Dude, that's what
There
I'm
it
looking
is.
up.
Yeah.
Is it spelled out?
Yeah, it's just, oh, come on. There we go. And it's Tracy Lords, Frank Whaley, Dina Meyer from Saw movies. You got George Newbern, Gabriel Anwar. So it's got some recognizable names in it. And it's basically six childhood friends coming together after someone they used to know has recently died. And they had all moved away, lived their lives, and then this one friend, I don't know if he stuck around from where they originally came from, but he died, and he left them all a note, and they came back to pay their respects. And they end up at this old, it almost looks like an old a very large house, and they they find this box, or there's a barn nearby. They find this box of remains and old objects, and they get stuck. They go to this. It's weird because the movie is a little confusing. They go to this house, and they somehow start exploring. They get down in the basement. The door locks on them. They get trapped in the basement, and the only way out is a door they find, which leads them into this, I don't want to say like underground hospital.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like this big house was sitting on top of a hospital that was used decades ago for experiments. Parents would give their kids away to this hospital, and the doctors there would raise the kids and experiment on them and stuff. And there's a ghost that slowly starts picking each one of them off. And as it turns out that they end up seeing, like, they all have this picture of, in their head, of like their own father. And they go down this hallway and they see these photos of the doctors, and they all recognize one of the doctors. It's like that. It's like, no, that was my dad. No, that was my dad. All these friends, and there was originally 8 of them, hence the title Crazy Eights. 6 of them are there. 1 has died. And then there was another girl whose remains they found. They were all raised in this hospital and have long since blocked out the memory. And they had planned to escape. Well, the 7 of them did escape, and, well, the 8 of them, I guess, had escaped, but as kids. And the one girl, they put her in a trunk just to hide her, and they were going to come back for her, and they didn't, and she suffocated in the trunk and died.
Okay.
And they all left and went their separate ways. So they all come back, and she's basically getting revenge on them for leaving her.
Nice.
And it's a really strange movie. And I remember looking up on Wikipedia, and because Wikipedia is user submitted, like some of the stuff on IMDb, someone had put in this completely batshit insane plot summary of the movie, and I'm just like, none of this happened in the movie. They completely made up the plot summary.
I think you got the wrong film there, Joe.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I'll explain it to you. And this isn't what I watched.
Mm-hmm. Now,
So, yeah,
I'm worried because this one has a 3.9 on IMDb.
Well, movie's subjective. Like,
Gotcha. No, I get it. 100%. I get it.
I thought it was a pretty. I like the whole abandoned hospital aspect of it, and that's almost exclusively used for horror movies.
Yep.
And they had there been worse actors in the movie, I may not like it as much. But who doesn't like Frank Whaley?
Yeah, no doubt. But I usually like him in a comedic sense, so hopefully he does a little bit of that.
Well, yeah. Because he's the complete smart ass of the group.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll check that out. Now, my number 8. Again, this is another local film. The Dark Stranger.
Okay. Dark Stranger.
I met this guy a few years ago. He's a great friend of mine now. His name's Chris Treblecock. This is a great combination of film and animation for a horror. And basic plot line here is it's about a girl whose mother was killed or took her own life. And her anxiety and her phobias have kicked in big time, so she can't even leave the house. And she's an artist working on a graphic novel called The Dark Stranger. And the Dark Stranger in the graphic novel starts to come to life.
Okay.
So now, having said that, too, yours was 3.9. This one's 4.4, and I think it's well above that. So have you borrowed this from me at all?
Dark Stranger, no. Not. I mean, I have borrowed few before, but not this one.
Okay. Remind me. I have got to lend this one to you.
Okay.
Because it has, there he is.
The title does sound familiar, though.
Enrico Colantoni. He is in it.
Oh, yeah. That reminds me, because I just finished watching both seasons of Bad Blood.
Okay.
A Canadian mafia TV show. And he was in the first season.
Well, what was funny is I'm watching the movie, and right when I saw him, it's like, oh, it's the guy from the not the Shield, Flashpoint.
I always say Veronica Mars' dad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right too. But then halfway through the film, I suddenly remembered, holy crap, he's the alien from Galaxy Quest. And
oh yeah,
I couldn't get that out of my head after that.
I've only ever watched Galaxy Quest once, so I have no trouble getting that out of my head.
Oh, I love Galaxy Quest. I do. So yeah, Dark Stranger. I'm going to lend it to you, but if you have not seen it out there, this is one I strongly suggest, and it's a local film too.
Okay.
Number 7, buddy.
I've already got this up on IMDb, and I know it's a low rating, and I've heard it was bad, but I love it. It's a movie called The Prince. It's got a 4.6, and this one is John Cusack, Bruce Willis, and Jason Patrick. It's from 2014, if multiple ones come up. And putting them all, like, Jason Patrick is definitely the star of this film. Bruce Willis probably might have 15, 20 minutes of screen time. Same with John Cusack. They're not cameos. They're more than cameos, and they're integral to the plot. They're put front and center, and they're not in the movie a tremendous amount. Anyway, this is one where Jason Patrick he's a mechanic, and that's his job. He's fixing cars, and he video chats with his daughter, who's in college. And one day, she gives him this kind of weird message, like, I'm going to go hang out with friends. She doesn't look great. And then she hangs up. And he tries to call her back. He gets a weird feeling. He tries to call her back, and it goes to voicemail. Some guy picks up and hangs up the phone. And he's like, okay, something's clearly wrong with my daughter. I'm going to go see what's up.
Yeah.
So he goes to, I think it's New Orleans. He goes to, let's see if it does. No, it doesn't. Yeah, it does say New Orleans. Yeah. Or she, and I don't know if it says where she went to college, but when he gets there, he meets a friend of hers from school, and she tells him that she may have hooked up with a friend she met from New Orleans, so they go there. And he basically says, like, okay, you're going to help me find her. And just like he seems to, Patrick in the movie, he seems to have this presence, like he has this intimidating presence.
Okay.
But he's just a father. He's just a father looking for his daughter. Well, as it turns out, and you get this through flashbacks during the movie, and from an insanely good monologue from John Cusack. John Cusack, who's apparently an old associate of Jason Patric's in the movie. Jason Patric was this legendary hitman, like probably 20 years ago. And he had his own section of town that nobody went in without his permission, and nobody even knew his name. They just called him the Prince.
Interesting.
And years ago, he tried to kill Bruce Willis, who's this. You can say he's a mob boss or something. He tried to kill him, but he sent his little girl to school in his car instead of him, and the bomb blew up his wife and daughter instead of him. So he's had a grudge against him for 20 some odd years.
Gotcha.
And Jason Patric, basically, he got out of the hitman business. He was spiraling down, self-destructing, meets this woman who picks him back up, puts him back together, becomes his wife, gives birth to his daughter. She ends up dying, and he raises her as a single father. So she basically helped turn his whole life around. But now he's come back to find his daughter, and these people in town are recognizing him, and they're like, holy shit, oh my God, it's him. It's like, you don't know who that is? And some of them are terrified into helping him, and some of them are like, we got to take this guy out. So
interesting.
And that's exactly what I thought the first time I saw it. It's just like, holy shit, you had no idea this guy was this big bad. He's just this father who's a mechanic looking for his daughter.
Very cool. I might have to check that one out because I love Jason Patric. There's John June. Hello, Rob. Hey, John. John, what's one? If someone asks you one movie you love to talk about, what is it? We want to know. Okay. I'm going to jump to my number 7.
Okay.
Unforgiven.
Oh yeah.
I am a Western junkie, and this one is like the Super Bowl of Westerns to me. Just because of how gritty it is, their acting. Because, man, the cast list, you've seen Unforgiven, right?
A couple times, and it's still, to me, and I'm alone in this, I still find it pretty forgettable.
Really?
I'm not.
Oh, something happened to James's camera and mic, apparently. I love this system.
And I just don't see the big deal about this movie, but I'm sure people find the same thing about The Prince and Crazy Eights and Saw 4. And
well, obviously people feel the same about Prince and Dark Stranger and Crazy Eights, but yet we love them. And that's what matters. Okay.
Unforgiven's not a bad movie. I love Clint Eastwood movies. I just don't think it's the be all end all of Westerns.
What would be
I'm not sure what?
Yeah, if someone said, "What's a Western?" What would you show?
Well, up near the top would be Young Guns.
See, I like Young Guns, but I find it a bubblegum Western. The
star-studded cast.
Yeah, I guarantee you, half of those cowboys did not look as pretty as they did in that movie.
Young Guns, the second in the Dollars trilogy for a few dollars more. Because Fistful of Dollars is good. For a few dollars more is great. And then I think it goes back down with Good and the Bad and the Ugly. That's another one I don't find all that impressive. But it's the For a Few Dollars More with him and Lee Van Cleef as the competing bounty hunters.
Mm-hmm.
The one I saw not too long ago for the first time, Once Upon a Time in the West.
That's a good one. Okay. To me, Unforgiven is it, but I do see where you're going with some of these.
Yeah.
So here's John says Independence Day is the one his go-to to talk about. Oh wait,
Nice.
Greg says, "Hey James Taylor, you're the best."
Hey, Greg.
But Independence Day, yeah, that was a blockbuster movie, like the summer blockbusters. So it had that action appeal. But I love Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum in that film.
Yeah.
Those guys could act in a commercial and I would watch it repeatedly. So I get why he picked that one. Okay. Let's get on to number 6, James.
Number six. I love this one. Number 6 is a Korean film, Korean crime drama called New World. And let's not give them any pictures here or whatever. Anyway, it's back in 2013. And it shares a lot of similarities to, have you seen Infernal Affairs, the first Infernal Affairs movie?
That doesn't sound familiar.
Okay, it was the basis for The Departed.
Okay. I remember
We
that
get-
trivia.
A cop infiltrates the mob, and a mobster infiltrates the cops, and they kind of both rise up the ranks on the opposite sides, and they end up investigating each other.
So
Trying to root out who's the mobster within the cops, who's the cop rat within the mobsters.
these movies on our list, it's safe to say we have watched them more than once, right?
Yes.
Okay, and that's what John just brought up. He goes, he's seen that movie like 1,000 times, Independence Day. And I think that's the key behind our choices, is these are movies we watch repeatedly.
Well, yeah, because you watch them, you watch YouTube videos, you look up Wikipedia entries and trivia, you watch it again to try and say, oh, did I find what I read? Oh, yeah.
Yep.
This one, now, while it's not exactly like Infernal Affairs and The Departed, it's... Okay. You've got, and right off the bat, well, not right off the bat, but shortly into the movie, you got this two guys who are friends in this organized crime down in Korea, in the one crime family. And the one friend is, I guess you call him an underboss. Like, there's the big boss, and then there's all these like 6 or 7, maybe 4 or 5 underbosses who have different standing on who would take over if he died. And one of his best friends is, he'd be like a captain or capo or something, not quite an underboss.
Okay.
Now, it turns out that the guy who's the capo or the captain is actually an undercover cop. And he's been an undercover cop for, I don't know if it's like 5 to 10 years. It's similar to Infernal Affairs. He's been in there for a while. And because he occasionally meets with his liaison with the cops, who's played by the guy who was the original star of Old Boy, the original Old Boy. It's that actor.
Okay.
And he's like, how much longer do I have to be in this? How much longer do I have to be in this? And I'm losing my mind here. I don't want to be a criminal anymore. And the guy is way less sympathetic than Martin Sheen or the original guy is. He's just like, you piece of shit. You're going to do what I say, or I'm going to out you to the mobsters. He's like, oh. So he has no choice but to stay in. But he's doing a good job, and he's risen through the ranks. He's got a wife, and they're expecting a baby and stuff. And the movie goes on and on and on. The big boss dies, and then people are competing to see who's gonna take over. And a bunch of people get killed, and long story short, it gets towards the end of the movie where his friend who was competing to be the boss is injured and is going to die. And he had originally set up like, okay, the cops are investigating me. I'm going to investigate this asshole cop who's actually the guy's contact. And he finds out all this dirt on the cop because he was going to bury the cop. And he ends up discovering that his friend is a cop. But he keeps it to himself in his safe because it's his best friend.
Okay.
And he, on his deathbed, he's like, you need to go and get stuff out of my safe. I left something for you, and buddy, at some point you need to choose a side. And it's sort of his subtle way of saying, like, I know who you really are, and you need to choose. Do you want to be a cop or do you want to be a criminal?
Okay.
And he dies, and the way the movie ends up was, he arranges to have all these other mob guys killed, like his competition, and destroys all the information that proves he's a cop, kills his contact in the department, and assumes control of this crime family.
He Luke Caged it.
Yeah, it's basically like in Infernal Affairs, where the cop never wants to actually live the criminal life. This guy does, survives completely, basically. I don't want to say, like, there's a term for it. Sort of like, you've seen Smokin' Aces, right?
No.
What?
No, I haven't. Not yet. I know.
Oh,
I want
okay.
to.
Well, I was going to liken it to something in that movie, but if you haven't seen it, forget it.
Gotcha.
He basically, where it diverges from Infernal Affairs is that he embraces the criminal lifestyle at the end of the movie.
Gotcha.
And I just thought it's just as good as Infernal Affairs, and then it just takes it that much further.
I'm gonna have to check that out. And it's actually interesting you picked that, because my number 6 is also Korean.
Oh,
Train to
Old Boy?
Busan.
Oh, Train to Busan!
Yeah.
Can't wait for the sequel.
And I gotta say,
You saw that
thanks
trailer?
to you for this. I had been told about this film for so long, and then you gave me the Blu-ray.
I had to give you a copy of it and say, keep it, it's yours. Now you have to watch it.
Exactly.
Well,
And-
it's more so because for some reason, I forgot I owned it, and I bought another copy, and I'm like, I have this movie already.
See, that's the fates going, okay, you got to give this to Bellamy because he's an idiot and won't watch it in any other way.
I know.
But man, this is one of the best for the zombie genre, you know. When people talk about Night of the Living Dead and all that, and it's like, okay, cool, check this out, because this throws it all on its head.
And it just reinforces my statement of the Korean film industry is top notch.
Yeah, they don't mess around, especially in that film. I mean, no, you gotta check it out.
Zombies on a bullet train.
Mm-hmm. They did it with snakes. Why not zombies, right?
Exactly.
All right, buddy. So what do you got for number 5?
Number five is, I'm just getting a drink. Number 5 is a movie called, how did I forget already? Aha! Shutter Island.
Oh, okay.
And another Martin Scorsese one, where this is similar to Joker, in that there are multiple interpretations of how this movie ends up.
Yeah.
And what actually occurred. You've seen this, right?
Oh yeah, a couple times.
Okay. Because it's revealed that he's actually a patient on the island, a very violent, dangerous patient, and the only way that they've seen success was to put him into this, I don't want to say role player, simulation, where they simulate that he's an FBI agent investigating a disappearance of a patient, and it works its way around to, you're actually the patient, and we're trying to bring you back to reality. And it works a few times, and then he reverts back.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think there's some debate is at the very end of the movie. It's like, okay, has he reverted back? And he says it right well, not to the camera. He says it right to his friend, who's actually his doctor, saying like, is it better to die a monster? What is it? Is it like, which is worse? What would you rather, to live as a, was it die a good man, or live as a monster, or die as a good man, or something? It's
Okay.
I'm trying to remember what he says. It's die.
Sadly, the only thing jumping to my head for that is Batman. So,
Batman. Oh, he's lived long enough to see yourself become the villain.
yep.
Let me see. Let's see if I can find the quote. And oh, here, okay. And it's more like, what basically, to me, he's acknowledging out loud to his friend and the audience that, okay, I am right now, I'm self-aware and I'm kind of cured, and I don't want to revert again, so I'm going to let them lobotomize me. Because he says the phrase, okay, here it is. This place makes me wonder. Yeah, what's that, boss? Which would be worse, to live as a monster or to die as a good man? And when he says that, he's just like, he's saying it, and then he looks his friend right in the eye. And then as like his friend gets up and looks at the doctor and gives him like the no, and Teddy walks off to be lobotomized. I think he's totally aware that, just like right now, I need to end this, because I could revert back to, I'm a FBI agent at any point.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are like, well, how much of the movie actually happened or whatever. The only question I have, and I haven't been able to get an answer from the amount I've seen it, is where does it start? Because the movie starts, he's on a boat going towards the island with Chuck,
Yep.
the other agent. And do they take him out on a boat while he's asleep and he wakes up in this persona? Where does it start in reality? That's the only thing I can't figure out.
Okay, and I can see that.
Because him coming to the island and them playing their roles and stuff like that all makes sense if they're playing out this charade. But how do they get him on a boat, sail the boat out, he wakes up, and they sail the boat back? That's the only thing. Everything else makes sense to me.
Well, now I'm gonna have to watch it again so I can answer your question.
Well, I appreciate the assistance. All right, what is
Now,
your? Oh,
my
sorry.
next one. Where is it here? My next one. I won't be going into a lot, only because I did last episode a ton, and it's Logan Noir.
Oh yes, you are a big fan of the black and white.
I love Logan, and the way they did that with the black and white, it just makes that movie pop that much more.
I've been meaning to go back over this one because, and we've talked about this before, where I mentioned like they put out The Mist in that special edition where you could watch it in black and white, and I just thought the colors were missing from that, and I felt the same way about Logan Noir and Mad Max, the Chrome and Steel edition, where it's black and white as well. But Logan in particular, Logan Noir in particular, I've been meaning to revisit. Just because what specifically you had said about how it makes him look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now I got to catch up here. Greg also commented, and I'm guessing this is about Train to Busan. Best zombie, I would say Zombieland, 28 Weeks Later, and Shaun of the Dead, and those are all amazing.
He's a very big fan of Shaun of the Dead.
He also said Shutter Island is amazing. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I do like. I would agree. I like 28 Weeks Later better than 28 Days Later. I don't know if it's because of the less of an indie look to it. It's more of like I like they expanded the world,
Gotcha.
and you get Jeremy Renner in there before most people knew who he was.
And now Greg was on the board with me, and I know where this one was. That was Batman. He was talking about when you were making your quote.
Yeah. He was. Yeah. So he agrees with you.
Exactly. Yeah, I apologize. I was busy looking over on the other screen, so I didn't catch those comments coming up. Are you dying over there, buddy?
No, I kept wanting to clear my throat, but I'm like, I got to get it away from the mic.
Okay, number 4.
Number four is it's a movie that not a lot of people know about for some reason, and it's a Guy Ritchie film, and it's still, and it's no, it's well, I have that, haven't watched it yet. I got it because it's a Guy Ritchie film. It's a movie called Revolver.
I know that
and
one.
it's a Jason Statham starring it. It's Jason Statham, Ray Liotta, Vincent Pastore, Andre Benjamin, Mark Strong, and it's a very cerebral psychological film. Now, the first time I watched it was at my younger brother's place, and he had a copy of the original version of the film. The picture you see there on IMDb is the cover of the DVD for the version that was released in stores that you can readily get. Well, maybe not so much anymore, but it's a slightly different. It's like the theatrical cut versus the original director's cut.
Gotcha.
And this movie is very, like, you get to the end, and my brother and I are just like, what the hell did we just watch? And I remember walking home after watching it with him and just like thinking about it the entire way home and the rest of the night. It's a very cerebral movie where they deal a lot with philosophy and psychology, and there's like sort of like the chapters of the movie are interspersed with these philosophical quotes. Mm-hmm. And if you get the original director's cut, which you can't get in stores, the movie ends and it's just black screen with no credits and just piano music, and the released version has the credits spliced in with interview clips with psychiatrists or doctors of philosophy and stuff. And it's a difficult movie to explain, but you've basically got Jason Statham who was working for Ray Liotta, and he screwed him over and sent him to prison. And while he was in prison, there was a cellmate on either side of them who he never met, but somehow communicated with them, and they all agreed that they were going to escape at the same time. Well, one day he wakes up and they've escaped and left him behind. He gets out of prison and decides, okay, well, I'm going to take Ray Liotta down, and I'm going to go all over town and clean out these casinos. Just like he's going to go in and bet really well and take them all down. And he starts doing that, comes into Ray Liotta's place and does that. And he gets into business with Vincent Pastore and Andre Benjamin, and they take all his money and they're going to use it to lend out as their loan sharks. Mm-hmm. And he's going to work for them and do money collections. And Ray Liotta is also wondering what he's doing out of prison. And he works for this secret big boss called Mr. Gold. And nobody knows anything about Mr. Gold, but he's the ultimate evil kingpin.
Okay.
And if you get to the end of the movie of the theatrical version, and it's basically the two guys he ends up working for, Andre Benjamin and Vincent Pastore, were his two cellmates. And because he never actually met them in person, he wouldn't know that.
Gotcha.
And he makes not peace with Ray Liotta, but he basically breaks it off with Ray Liotta and Mr. Gold and all that stuff. Well, if you get the director's cut, it leads you to believe that his two cellmates, who he was working for, are basically in his head. They're all the same person. And and Ray Liotta, Mr. Gold may not be real, maybe inside his head, and you just really don't know by the end of the movie. Now it can be super confusing if you want a concrete version of the movie. The theatrical version is probably the way to go. If you want one of those that you just can't stop thinking about and you have to keep watching it to understand, that would be that version. And I apologize if I didn't do a good job of explaining it. The movie doesn't do a much better job itself. But that's part of its charm. And again, it's a Guy Ritchie, well-known director, and this is probably one of his least known movies. Not one of his least liked movies. That would probably be swept away. But no one seems to know about this. I was talking to my boss about it. He's like, how do I not know about this movie?
Mm-hmm. And that's why this list exists, because we want people to know.
Yes. All right. You're number 4.
My number 4. I am just going to do this. There's my number 4.
Oh.
Natural Born Killers. I like this for a couple of reasons. First and foremost is the message that Oliver Stone was putting out about how the media glorifies violence.
Yeah.
You know, it's peppered all through here. And then on top of that was the editing process, like the way they edited this film. They used, I think it was 7 different types of film to make this movie.
7?
All the way down. Yeah, all the way down to 8mm and 32mm, 35mm. And you can tell when they're doing these cuts. Not to mention he does a very art style cut, because sometimes some of the cuts actually relate to the person's emotions that they're feeling.
It kind of reminds me of 2 different movies. One was a Steven Soderbergh film called Full Frontal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not what you think. And the other one was Steve Jobs, where in Steve Jobs, it takes place in 3 different time periods, and they used 3 different kinds of film to show the time progression.
Gotcha.
Sorry, this will be the last thing I say. In Full Frontal, they do it because there's a movie, and then there's a movie within the movie, and then there's a movie within the movie within the movie. And the further down you get, they use a lower grade of film.
Gotcha.
But it only goes as far as 3 different kinds, I believe.
Yeah. No, this one, because it's Robert Downey Jr.'s in it. He plays a television, hype reporter, kind of like for Current Affair and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, totally.
When they cut to those things, it's a downgraded version of film, because it's like VHS, you know. When they do these cross cuts, sometimes it's an 8mm version and things like that. And there's Kenny Casanova. Hey, buddy. Hey, Kenny. Here's a good one for you. If you had to pick one film that you would love to talk to people about, what would it be? That's what our topic is today. And this is one of mine. Like, you look at the cast list on this one too. You know, Robert Downey Jr., Woody Harrelson, Juliette Lewis, Tom Sizemore, Rodney Dangerfield. And this was one of his best performances, and he had no clue what he was filming.
I didn't like him in this movie, and I don't think you were supposed to.
No, you definitely were not.
I don't like this movie at all in general. I've only ever watched it once, though. And it was just like, I watched this and Fargo in a very short period of time, and I hated them both. But I've only ever given them one chance.
Let me ask you, why didn't you like it? What were your reasons?
This one, it was so messed up. It was around this time where, like, I loved, like, Oliver Stone when he made these biopics and stuff like that. He did an awesome job. But when he went off and did these original things, he went batshit insane. Like, did you ever see U-Turn?
No.
The one he did with Sean Penn and Billy Bob Thornton and Jennifer Lopez. That movie is really out there. But it has the similar visuals to this. And I was just like, I didn't get the media I don't know if I was mature enough to appreciate this movie at the time.
Well,
That's
I think
probably
you should give it a good, honest watch.
you're probably right.
There's a challenge for you.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Number 3.
Number three is a movie called The Double. Now, this is not the movie The Double with Jesse Eisenberg, where a doppelganger shows up, and I hate that movie. This is one from 2011, starring Richard Gere and Topher Grace.
Really?
And this is one where I've heard it criticized online, and I guess if you haven't seen the movie, I can understand why you would criticize it, because you watch the movie and basically Richard Gere is a retired CIA operative, and he gets paired with a young FBI agent to, like, a senator gets murdered, and the evidence points to this infamous Russian assassin named, what was his name? Cassius. And Cassius was an infamous Russian assassin, and he had his own stable of assassins called the Cassius 7. And either Cassius is still alive. Well, I mean, it was confirmed years ago by Richard Gere as the CIA guy that Cassius is dead. He's dead. And he couldn't possibly have done this. Someone is killed the senator and made it to look like Cassius. And the FBI agent is like, well, it could be that, or it could be Cassius is still alive. He's like, no, he's dead. And he knows for a fact. Well, you get 3/4 of the way through just the trailer, and it's revealed that Richard Gere is Cassius. And he got himself appointed to investigate himself.
Interesting.
Basically, and go and take down. Yeah. Now everyone thinks like, oh, well, they gave the whole twist away in the trailer. Well, that's not entirely true if you go and see the movie. You watch the movie, and I apologize for this being a spoiler, but again, this movie is so well done. It doesn't matter that the twist gets spoiled, because it's still great to watch. As it turns out, the FBI agent Topher Grace is a Russian sleeper agent who knows that Cassius is still alive, who murdered the senator to lure Cassius out of hiding, in sense to lure Richard Gere out of hiding, and he was going to take him out. That's the real twist behind it.
Okay.
So, I mean, oh yeah, they give away that he was Cassius, but what they don't give away is that the FBI agent was actually working for the Russians this whole time.
Gotcha.
Now, but come on, it's Richard Gere.
Yeah, I love Richard Gere.
And Martin Sheen. Actually, Martin Sheen's in there too. Stephen Moyer from True Blood. Odette Annabelle Stanikatic from the girl from Castle, the star of Castle.
Okay.
But she's in a small role, but she's in there. So yeah, that I just thought the story in this movie was really well done, and I like talking about it because I like talking about saying, no, they didn't spoil the movie in the trailer. I'm spoiling it right now, but it's like, you got to watch the movie. You're not getting it.
I'm gonna check that one out.
I think it's very worth watching, because it's very worth watching, like that, because you got a number of people with a very duplicitous role. Like, you don't know they're playing two different sides of their own personality, and then
I love
this
that.
guy turns and this guy turns. And all right, your number 3.
My number 3. Let's bring this bad boy up.
JFK.
Yes.
JFK. I love JFK.
I love this one just because of the rabbit hole it made me fall down into in the early 90s. I ended up going to university to take Russian because of this film.
Really?
Yep. And
interesting.
Also, like you said, with JFK doing the biopics, the editing in here is crazy good. You know,
This is one of the few ones where I don't care which version I'm watching, the theatrical or the director's cut. I love them. I love them both because the
yeah,
best parts are in both. To
and it
me.
gives you so much information. Like just over 3 hours, I saw this thing 9 times in the theater.
Oh, I never saw this one in the theater.
Oh,
I probably watched it 9 times on VHS.
yeah, I actually had the laser disc for this one too, and it's fun when I watch it now. I remember where every single break is, where I had to flip the disc over.
Yeah, I want to say it's right. It's right. It's right at the point they arrest Clay Shaw.
Oh, dude, there's 3 discs. Okay, there's 6 breaks,
Oh,
no, 5 breaks.
okay. Then I'm thinking of the end of the first VHS tape.
Yeah, because it was a double tape. Yeah, I remember. Oh,
They arrest Clay Shaw, and then it cuts off.
if you want a little bit of history, and again, things
Frozen.
might be skewed depending on what you believe, what you don't believe.
Oh, there you are.
There is so much information in this movie; it is crazy. But now, on to James number 2.
Okay, you were skipping a bit there.
Yeah, I noticed that. We're all good.
Okay. All right. Okay. Number two. Number two is Predestination,
Oh, good choice.
which I don't know if I've mentioned on this show since my very first appearance. And that was basically to when we were talking about the Spirit Brothers, I think.
Yeah.
And this movie is, I think it's at the moment, my third favorite movie of all time. And I just love the whole mind-blowing revelations in this movie where, well, one, it's weird. I don't know if it's disturbing, but it's weird how much they make Sarah Snook look like a man in this movie, how good a job they do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not just how they make her look, how well she acts it. But I mean, you get like she meets up with this bartender, and she wants revenge for the guy who knocked her up and led to her giving birth and getting a hysterectomy and turning into a man. And she wants to kill this guy. And Ethan Hawke is like, okay, I'll put you in touch with him. And they go back in time, and it turns out she's the man that she ran into and had sex with and left. And the child she gives birth is actually her. And turns out Ethan Hawke is this infamous bomber. And they're all the same person. And your mind is just exploding by the end of the movie.
Exactly, because it loops and it loops and it loops until it's like putting a string around your finger. It just keeps getting smaller and smaller and tighter and tighter.
Yeah, and it's the ultimate time travel movie because the guy Noah Taylor, his Ethan Hawke's boss in the movie is basically, you are a gift to this agency, to this world. You are born in a predestination paradox where like everything needs, all of this has happened before and it's going to happen again, and as long as you keep doing what you're supposed to do, all of this is going to keep happening the same way forever and ever and ever. And it's just
Brown
like, okay,
lost his mind.
He goes back in time and kidnaps the baby and delivers it to the orphanage because it has to grow up to become her, to give birth to him, so that he can go back in time.
Like I said, Doc Brown just would have lost his mind.
Oh my goodness. I almost lost my...
Kenny got here. Actually, I'm going to jump to the very last one that he said because I just mentioned it. Back to the Future trilogy is one of the ones that his go-to.
Oh yeah.
Evil Dead trilogy, the original Matrix, and Planet of the Apes.
Which Planet of the Apes?
With Kenny, I'm guessing the original. That's my guess. We'll wait for him to chirp in, but I think
so. Though if there was a Planet of the Apes movie that I'd like to that I would want to talk about the most because of how how crazy it is would be the Tim Burton one, because that's the one that's the most confusing by the end of it. The original, it's just like, okay, let's talk about how far over the top Charlton Heston was going, and the Rise of the Planet of the Apes, the newest trilogy, I would say first. So he is talking about the original. Okay.
Yeah.
I my favorite out of all those is War for the Planet of the Apes. For the longest time, it was Rise, but I thought War was just so perfect.
They did a great trilogy at the end. They did. But those first ones are iconic to go back and watch because of the makeup that they used, you know? Like
that is really impressive for its day.
What did they say here? The original was great though, twist and all for its time.
Yeah. I saw Spaceballs decades before I ever saw Planet of the Apes. So I had it spoiled for me since I was a kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially with the guys in the ape makeup riding up saying like, oh shit, Spaceballs.
Yeah, that kind of gave it away.
There goes the planet.
Here's my number 2.
Number 2. Oh, Near Dark.
This is one of the best vampire movies, I think. And it's cool because they never use the word vampire. Right?
Well, it's like those zombie movies that never use the word zombie.
Right. But the ending sucks. Okay. Anybody that goes to watch it for the first time, the ending is not the best at all. Okay. I think it's the lamest excuse for an ending, but the movie, the characters, the story up until that point, this is the perfect vampire movie.
It's not basically like, I don't want to be a vampire anymore. Oh, we're both cured right off into the sunset.
Pretty much. It's a blood transfusion.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm so sorry. Vampires are dead. You can't fix dead with a blood transfusion. So,
well, I mean, unless I mean, there's different theories. Like they're able to cure themselves in the Blade, at least one of the Blade movies.
And again, I think that's a touch lame because vampires are dead. Mind you, they have a completely different mythos too, because vampires can reproduce.
Yeah. Well, it changes from each incarnation that comes out. Like Anne Rice had her own version, and Marvel, I guess, has their own version with Blade because that's where it came from. And Buffy has their own version. Like Joss Whedon has his own version, and Catherine Bigelow's writing partner who came up with this story. Because I remember they had a special edition that they put out when I was working at Rogers, and I watched the documentary on this, and it was basically like her and I can try and bring this up, and her and this other guy, basically she wrote one movie and he directed it, and he wrote a movie and she directed it. So he wrote Near Dark and she directed it. She wrote this movie called Undertow and he directed it.
Gotcha.
And it's 19
is great. And yes, her novels are just brilliant. But to me, the ultimate vampire trio, Bill Paxton, Lance Henriksen, and Jeanette Goldstein. Those 3 people. Now, there's also, and I cannot remember his name, he plays a youngster-ish kind of vampire. And then May, the love interest. But wow. Bill Paxton, if you watch him.
Oh, yeah, the girl from Lawnmower Man.
Yes. But like
even she doesn't act any.
Look at that poster.
Sorry.
That's Bill Paxton from one scene in the movie.
Yeah, that's the most iconic poster of the movie. Bill Paxton like that.
Yep. I mean, it's just incredible. Did you like Dawn of the Dead? Yes. Both. True Blood was like bubblegum vampire, It was a tweener kind of thing.
I liked True Blood. I watched the first three at least. I saw at least the first 3 seasons of it, and then I stopped watching for whatever reason and never went back. And not because I didn't like it.
Gotcha. Okay. We're at that time. Number one.
Number one. Number one for me is Terminator Genesis.
Really?
It is, because I remember seeing this one and it was like, I wasn't that impressed with it, and it was because the former coworker of mine, he lent me the book for, I believe it was.
Just while you finish, Kenny liked True Blood, but the last season was lacking, and that's very true.
I never got that far. I believe it was the novelization for the original Terminator movie.
Weird pick. I'll go with him on that.
And it included details from Terminator 2. It was either that or it was the novelization Terminator 2. Either way, it had stuff that I think in some form or another they used in Terminator Genesis, and it was basically like I went back and forth with my coworker about this, talking about it for the better part of a year.
Okay.
And to the point where he didn't want to talk about it anymore, and I didn't want to stop talking about it. And I came around to it's right up there as, I think, my favorite Terminator movie now, just because of how much I've wanted to dig into the movie. When you go back with like, okay, who sent Pops back? Well, nobody knows because those files have been erased. Well, and it's weird with like, okay, he's going back to replay the events of the original Terminator. This is Kyle Reese.
Yeah.
And as he's about to go, John Connor gets assimilated basically by the Skynet Terminator in real form. And that causes what I think Arnold says a nexus point, where changes the past and the future as he's about to travel. So by the time he gets back to the past, all this other shit has happened. And you wonder, well, like, okay, he gets back there. Pops has already been sent back to protect Sarah at a younger age and raised her, so she knows Kyle Reese is coming. But so does you could say it's Byung-Young Lee, the guy who plays Storm Shadow and I Saw the Devil and all these other movies, basically playing what people have called the Asian Robert Patrick in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because he has his hair cut and stuff just like Robert Patrick did in Terminator 2, and he's the same liquid metal Terminator. Well, he knew Kyle Reese was coming back. How did he know? And who sent Pops back? And why doesn't John Connor, who kind of meets them, they jump forward and he jumps back, and he doesn't even know who sent Pops back. So there's so many questions this movie raises, and if they weren't interesting questions, who gives a shit? But it's one of those ones where, like, I need to know, and they're not going to continue with this because they went and did Terminator Dark Fate and not entirely erased. After watching that movie a couple times, I realized that the vast majority of the Terminator movies you can still believe existed.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's maybe one in there. I don't know. Maybe it's Rise of the Machines or something that you could ignore. I don't know. Anyway,
Kenny says now we have heat, right? Because he questions Genesis. He goes Genesis, but then he asks, "Is it better than the original?"
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I love all of them, but I love all of them more than the original. But I still love the original. I watched that 7 times in one day when I taped it off First Choice Super Channel or something. I love all the broke the prime directive of time travel in that film, which
what's the prime directive is don't interfere with the time traveler coming back to help you, because that's what like Sarah Connor did. She got the jump on Kyle before he could rescue her. She rescued him.
Yeah, you don't use the time cop theory where same matter can't occupy the same space at the same time, or they merge and turn into a little puddle of goo.
Well, I'm sorry, but selecting this film is like saying the last season of Lost was the best.
Okay, I'm gonna quote. I'm gonna use a term from the first season of Community, where they'd say, I hate to say I told you so, so I'll shout it through cupped hands. I told you so, and say it was the best. I think that's the best series finale in history. It's my favorite TV show of all time. But everyone has their favorites, and it's just like movies. It's like you like what you like, you don't like what you don't like. I understand people being confused and not liking the last season or the last episode of Lost. I completely understand it, and I love it.
Well, and that's exactly what this list is about too, though, because everybody has their own opinions. Like some of the films that we showed. You saw one, it was 3.9. One I picked was 4.6. So obviously, we are on the other side of the like button on those films, right? Yeah. And this is the nice thing about it. Is be able to chat about it. And Kenny finally says, Lost was great though, and I liked it all. So see, even he admits he kind of liked it. Oh.
Well, a lot of people gave up after the first few seasons.
And Lost, to me, it felt like JJ had these plans and then people guessed him. So he had to start writing so that the people were wrong and then wrote himself into so many corners. That's just me.
See, here's the thing. You can't answer every question. I mean, granted, Lost probably raised more questions than it could answer than any other movie or show before it, but it's not the only one that's done that. I just think it's unfair to single it out for doing that. And I also like the YouTube videos where they put it into a song where they list all the questions that never got answered. I get a kick out of that. I still love the show. I love the questions they did answer more than I wish these ones got answered.
If you play Arkham City, the Batman game, you hear people in the streets talking about Lost.
Really?
Yeah, it's just background noise. But you're swinging through the city and you'll hear one of the bad guys suddenly chirp up, and they ended it in a church. What was that all about? Like they just have these throwaway lines in there.
That's awesome. Yes, they guessed them. That's what I think. Same as Jar Jar Binks was supposed to turn heel. I remember hearing a quote from George Lucas saying Jar Jar is the key.
Well, he is. He's the one who starts the Clone Wars. I think that's what he meant.
How is he the one that starts the Clone Wars?
Because Amidala goes off planet. He's in the council, and he's the one who gives the permission of the Senate, like brings it up, to grant the Senate emergency powers to form an army.
Oh, does he?
Yep.
That happened in.
So you should watch those.
Is that in Attack of the Clones?
Yep.
Attack of the Clones, is that when it? Yeah.
Yep, that's when it happened. Right in there.
I glossed over that point. I was recently going through all of them, and I went through all of the Clone Wars TV show. And
oh yeah,
interesting. Darth
Jar Jar. If you look at everything he does,
I've seen videos about that. Although they also include the fact that he can jump really high and does a flip before he dives into the air.
Yep.
That might just be a Gungan ability.
It might. But man, if there's smoke, and a lot of that stuff seems legit.
George Lucas doesn't seem like the kind of guy to just throw out a phrase just to troll people.
No. All right, here's my number one.
All right, your number one.
Casualties of War.
Ooh, I have not seen this movie in decades. And I recently found the director's cut.
Oh, I don't know if that's what I have or not. I would love to see that.
So would I.
This one, man, I can talk about this for days. And I do. I've gotten in conversations with people because they go, I can't stand that film. It's a horrible film. I said, you're right.
Great film.
No. The topic is horrible, and I agree with them on that. And they say, I can't stand it. And it's like, well, this movie is doing its job. If you feel uncomfortable at the end, you should.
Well, yeah, because of what they're dealing with. Like, okay, his sergeant was doing terrible things to these prisoners, and
Just the one. Like they kidnapped a girl.
yeah, does he turn him in? Does he go along with it because it's chain of command?
And
See,
that's
if I was
the
to,
thing too. He does turn them in, and they don't do anything.
yeah,
Nobody does anything until he ends up spilling his guts to a priest.
it,
And the
it, oh,
priest takes
it makes me wonder. It makes me wonder, and I never listened to the commentary that I think is on it. And I'm not going to go search for the DVD now because that'll take forever. Because anytime I want to find a movie, I can't. But I always go back to the one shot in the courtroom where Sean Penn walks by, and it looks like he whispers something to Michael J. Fox. But I don't know if you ever find out what that was. It's like, I'm going to kill you for this or something.
Oh, I know what you mean.
I can't remember if it's right near the end or not. Because isn't the movie mostly a flashback of him talking to the priest?
Oh, no.
Like he's telling the priest all this?
No. It's the movie as it happens, and you get about 3/4 of the way through, and that's when he talks to the priest. And then they go back, they do the investigation, because it all happens right at the end. Let me see here. I think this is the biggest part for me. This is an article from the New Yorker, October 18th, 1969.
Oh, are we back?
Are you back, buddy?
Looks like I got booted.
Okay, you're here.
Okay.
This is an article from the New Yorker in October 18th of 1969. The story behind casualties of war is a real one.
Oh, yeah. Oh, nice.
And that's what makes it that much more uncomfortable. Is that this was not just a plot. This was not, a story. It was a real event.
It certainly sounds like something that could have happened.
Yeah. And that's just it. That article, it talks about it. And oh my God, it's crazy insane. And like I said, I watched that movie over and over again. And basically for the performances, because you got John C. Reilly, Michael J. Fox, Sean Penn. This is a Michael J. Fox serious role.
Yeah. And I had forgotten that some of the people. I haven't seen this movie in decades. I remember vividly Michael J. Fox and Sean Penn, but almost no one else because it's been so long since I watched it.
Man, it's got the iconic scene where he walks into the tent with a shovel and just nails the one guy in the face.
Isn't it Brian De Palma?
Yep. Brian De Palma directed it. But there you go. John C. Reilly, John Leguizamo.
Oh, John Leguizamo.
Yep.
Nice.
Ving Rhames.
Ving Rhames is in there? See,
yes,
it'd be before I knew who John C. Reilly and Ving Rhames were.
Yeah, this was 89. Yeah, 1989.
If I was to put on this list, one of the war movies or Vietnam War movies I like to talk about the most, it would be the Uwe Boll movie Tunnel Rats.
Yes.
Just because that's well, I think it's one of the best Vietnam War movies ever made, just because of it's the only one I've ever seen where they, for at least a little bit of it, they take it from the viewpoint of the Viet Cong and realize that it affected them just as much as it affected the U.S.
This kind of sounds like another topic. Vietnam movies.
Oh, I'm down. I don't know if it'll be a super long list, but I could certainly make up the time by talking at length about a few of them.
I think we should.
I think we should too.
Alrighty, so that is our list of most talked about films.
Yay!
Yes, I think it was good. Like we had some controversy on there.
Yeah, because there's a few of those that I've been wanting to talk about and haven't had the chance to talk to anyone about them just yet. So I'm glad to get that out.
And here it is. Right now, I am posting our list of those 10 films. I'm going to post it right on the Madhouse page.
Nice.
so that anybody can look at it. Anybody can watch the movies, which I strongly suggest they should. Where is it?
Spoilers or no, because again, I would say it wouldn't be. It'd be a movie that isn't worth talking about if it was just all about the twist in the movie. I mean, unless the twist was so good that it made watching the rest of the movie worthwhile.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it on the list otherwise.
Exactly. Okay. So let's get rid of that. And we will wrap it up.
Watch the movies, which I strongly.
Oh, echo.
Cool. Oh, sorry. I
Not a worry, dude. Not a worry. That kind of wraps it up for us for this week. So, for another week at the Movie Madhouse, I'm Rob.
I'm James.
And we will be seeing you all next week.